a physical entity. I can feel it for myself. It's self-evident. In fact, when we wake up in the morning, we realize I'm awake and I'm somebody. I'm not a dead stone. And when we perceive that, what can we do about it? Well, that's what we intend to talk about. And that's what we have been talking about on this program over the last several years. So thank you, everybody, for joining in from wherever you might be right now. We talked, JM, didn't we, before the break? And I hope you all had a great break and you got a little time for yourself. We did talk about that. Take some time, get a pad of paper and a pen and write down your goals. And also, an added feature was decide which values you'd like to pursue. Some of you reported back that looking at various values like honesty or compassion or equanimity, and there are dozens of them, you can put them in the hundreds. It's a little like being a kid in a candy shop. You look and you say, oh, I like that, I like this, I like that. How could you carry them all? Well, that's again the human spirit, realizing the metaphysical qualities that we can develop if we apply ourselves to it. That's sadhana or practice. Why not improve oneself? And we also talked about writing down priorities. Was anybody here for that? You remember that? Goals, priorities, values. And hopefully that helped. One that really stuck in my mind was equanimity. It's something that you can notice every day, dozens, if not hundreds of times as you interact with the world. I'll speak for myself. I notice it constantly. I could see a little meter almost in my head that goes back and forth, and let's say equanimity is in the center. And what can tip the needle this way or that? Somebody could step on the back of your flip-flop and make you almost trip, and you might think, what did you do that for? Or somebody might drive too close to you, and you might think, you're trying to kill me. Or you might be uh, waiting for somebody, and there are so many stimuli in this world that can cause us a sense of disturbance. We who might have dedicated ourselves to the value of equanimity for 2026 might then look and see that little meter in our head and notice which way did it go? How could you keep it in the middle? This is something that Krishna speaks about regularly in the Bhagavad Gita. Talks about the ways in which, for instance, he gives the example of a candle flame. If you ever notice flame of a candle, if there's a tiny little bit of wind or even breath, less than wind, then you'll notice it moves a little bit, it flickers. And he describes in one place in the Bhagavad Gita, does Krishna, that a person who's able to achieve equanimity is like the candle flame in a windless place. Doesn't move, it's steady. And we are like those candles, so we can take that metaphor for ourselves and notice how we're keeping our composure. Another aspect of equanimity. Are we grounded enough so that whatever atmospheric, mental influence there might be on us, that we're able to keep that composure, keep our posture, as they say, despite the fact that there are many causes for us to flinch or for us to waver, using the metaphor of the candle flame, or flicker even, or to speak of being practically extinguished. Our spirit can be dampened or it can go out, our sense of purpose in life, because of the onslaught of influences that we are all subjected to in this world. Nobody's spared, and it's not our fault. It is the nature of the energy that we live in, this material world, is constantly changing. In fact, that's the name of the world, Bhava, Bhava, all small a's, so it's Bhava. Bhava means that which is always changing. And I was listening to a song the other day, it was by George Harrison, and he was talking about change. And it has a melancholy melody to the song. And it just struck me how much we're affected by change because we expect things to stay the same, don't we? We think, oh, I have what I have. And then when suddenly we don't have it, we think, what happened to it? Where'd it go? Or we may have a relationship and then the relationship is interrupted for one reason or another, and we can feel disturbed, melancholy, in fact, missing the past. And the ancient wisdom literatures advise us to get grounded in this environment. A person who is grounded, by the way, is another word in Sanskrit. You might like this. It's called dhira. Dhira, Dhira, dhira. It means to be steady in spite of the various changes in the world. So we can be grounded, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Four concepts given in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna gives us these to practice. And of course, we can have some high philosophical concepts like be equipoised, but then how would you do that? How would you stay equipoised? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. What do you think, JM?
Looking forward to it actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. I'm still drinking electrolytes because we just flew in. We flew all the way from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka to Bangkok. That's about 3 hours. And then from Bangkok to Hong Kong, that's another 4 hours. And then Hong Kong to San Francisco, or as they say, SFO. That was another 12 and a half hours. Little hop here, hop there. But it's amazing that we can do that. In fact, sometimes people complain when their flight is a little late, and I'm thinking, hey, it's like we're flying through the sky in our living room with a little blanket over us. So let's not lose sight of the fact that it's a miracle, but it is dehydrating, and there are some effects changing time zones so fast. Although I did find a way to counteract that as much as possible. Should I, as an aside, reveal that? Of course, I looked it up on ChatGPT, and my old buddy, ChatGPT, seems to like me a lot. And just being calibrated from the start, one of them is changing. It had me change my wristwatch to the time in San Francisco. So psychologically, I was already on that time. And then it advised me which times I should rest and which times I should stay awake on the flight. But one of the greatest pieces of advice has to do with the light of the sun, something I'm already doing, especially coming from uh, that side of the world and coming to San Francisco. One of the ways to reset your biological clock is to be awake for the sunshine coming up. I see, Aditi, you're getting sunshine coming through the window there. And especially in your eyes, it helps to stimulate the hormones like melatonin that help to regulate sleep and reset your biological clock. I find that fascinating that the human body is so finely tuned to the earth's rhythms and the sun and so forth. And so that was very helpful. Okay, so let's look at a few thoughts as given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And we entitled this show today, Get Grounded. And 4 instructions for equanimity. So grounding and equanimity, I'm equating. And yeah, why don't you go to the first slide? Because your slides are so nice. This sense of grounding is another aspect of being equipoised, being in touch with the earth. That's why I brought up about jet lag and how to overcome it and so forth. I like the image here where this person is sitting on a stone, apparently in the water, surrounded by nature. There's an image of a tortoise. We'll talk about the tortoise. And remembering that we're on a earth planet, a stone floating through space. We're part of it. Our physical mental body is part of this ecosystem, and we're in the middle of it. When I say we, we're not the body, we're not the mind, but we're the conscious entity. If you want an easier word, conscious entity, that's 5 syllables. If you want it an easier way to say it, jiva. Jiv means life. The jiva means the conscious living entity. Do you mind if I use that word throughout as a substitute? Anybody want your money back if I use it? Okay. So the jiva, the living force, last time I'll qualify it, I'll just call it jiva, is within this environment that's ever changing. And part of that ecosystem is our own body. So we can't deny the body. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives this concept, no slides yet, called yukta. If somebody could put it in the chat box, yukta means balanced. I suppose that person is balancing on that rock. Balance is, well, I'll say in the active voice, Krishna recommends that we stay balanced in the way that we eat, the way we sleep, the way we recreate. Of course, there are other ways, but these are 3 main ways he mentions. And it means, he says, don't eat too much, don't eat too little, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. Don't recreate. I love the word recreate. And don't too much and don't do it too little. So the implication is, and these are just samples of lifestyle elements, that we should try to live in a balanced way. If we don't take care of our bodies and minds, then it's very difficult to practice self-realization because it's the vehicle that is a facilitation. We're given an opportunity to use the human body to understand ourselves and the origin of ourselves and to improve our consciousness. So you have to take care of your body. That's why yogis generally, or those interested in self-realization, avoid habits that tend to spike the consciousness in different ways. Like intoxication is a way in which we disturb the consciousness. Of course, some people claim properties of self-realization and hallucinogenics and so forth. Well, maybe, but the fact is, if you do that, if you go that route, then it's very difficult to ascertain which part is you and which part's coming from the outside source. Overstimulation by various elements that are artificial, and we can't tell actually how we're doing or how our body's doing. And getting involved in those types of activities that naturally disturb the mind, like overextending ourselves in risk in the world, or packing our schedule so full that we don't have a moment to ourselves. to review how we're doing, who we are looking within, and so forth. So yukta means we should take time in our lives to attend to the ultimate purpose of life, which is to experience our own consciousness, be curious about urges and the ways in which we're being buffeted by the material nature from one place to the next, and learn how to be equipoised. So getting grounded is a holistic lifestyle. It means be grounded in the way you sleep, the way you eat, the way you interact with other people. Don't lie. Be truthful, honest, be friendly. Avoid those that want to do you harm and so forth. Yeah, it's a holistic science. JM, let's look at the first slide because it reveals the first concept. Were you going to say something? I could tell you were going to say something. Go ahead, JM.
No, I was just there is a couple of comments which came on the chat box. One is Bhakta Matthias said Yukta balance. So like he's reiterating on that.
Well, Subramanian also said nice music.
Yeah,
And Shruti Priya said yes, please. And I can't remember what she's saying that for, but
that is to get the tips on how to beat the jet lag.
okay. Oh, yeah. Right. Ask ChatGPT. It'll just give you a schedule to follow, whatever direction you're flying from if you're crossing time zones. Sure. Okay, let's go. We'll start with the first slide. And these are taken from primarily Bhagavad Gita. Look at the word tolerance, to tolerate things and remain equal. Pleasure, pain, mental balance comes from tolerance. Now, someone might say, well, that doesn't sound like a practice. That just sounds like not doing anything. Well, it is a practice because we, for instance, might be in a situation where we're provoked. Somebody might provoke us knowingly or unknowingly. We might be triggered. And so this happens, for instance, on the road. You've heard me harp on this before because I notice it, and a lot of people notice it when you're driving. It's a very impersonal environment, and you might come across people who are, well, let's call it euphemistically impolite the way they drive. And, or at least you might interpret it that way, and it might disturb your mind. So, is there a practice that would be recommended? Well, I think even the AAA, American Automobile Association, would recommend the same thing as the Bhagavad Gita, and that is don't overreact because it's one of the ways that people get into trouble on the road is they become agitated when somebody else around them drives in an errant or an irresponsible way. And who knows what might happen if you even look at the person askance these days. Somebody might take exception to that and react in a way that could change your life. This is how volatile the environment we're in. And I'm just giving the example of driving, but the world responds to us, other living entities respond to us. I was once encountered by a cantankerous monkey when I was living in a very rustic area in India, and there were lots of the rhesus monkeys who are a little bit aggressive. And one of them had confronted me on a patio that was on the second floor. And I was trying to get to the door, and the monkey was between me and the door. So I pretended to pick up something because I'd seen other people do this. And then, like I had supposedly a rock in my hand or something like that. Go, go. And then the monkey is so smart. He looked and saw my hand and said, there's no rock there. And then he was twice as aggressive. Luckily, I made it to the door and slammed it before he could get to me. I know the owner of a jewelry store named Shriji Jewelers who got thrown from the second floor by a monkey who was aggressive. So it was a challenging situation, but I noticed that there was an immediate response, from the person. So people around us can respond, and if things can escalate very quickly in various situations, whether it be a monkey or another driver or a monkey-like driver who's driving errantly on the road. And so tolerance is a practice. We have to decide ahead of time that if for instance, let me just stay with the example of driving. If somebody drives errantly, the safest thing to do is to not react, is to stay in your lane, drive safely, keep your eyes on the road. Don't try to reciprocate their rudeness because it'll escalate. Would you consider that an act of tolerance, anybody? Aditi? Tolerance? Yes, and you have to decide ahead of time that when it comes, I'll be tolerant. Can you think of any other opportunities you might have in a normal day when something might come up that you have to tolerate? Let's hear a suggestion. Either chat box or you can speak up. And while you're doing that, thinking of it, I'm going to look up the word tolerate. I'm going to tell you what it means. Allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. Accept or endure someone or something unpleasant or disliked. Okay, Uday, go ahead, tell us.
Uh, I've been practicing this I don't know if it's a tolerance or if it's a way of life. For the last 2 months, is that when your spouse is angry on something, it's probably your mistake or it's the circumstances, and the other person is agitated and angry. Our human reaction is to be same, respond with the same agitation or anger. So I calm that down. Like when my wife responds really angry or upset about it, I come down. I try to understand. I cool things down, and I'm practicing this for the last 2, 3 months, and it's works. It works after things. So it's a practice, and it happens very often in our family lives, and it helps me to stay calm.
Thank you, Uday. I think this is the best example. I would put it even above road rage or driving on the road because the people we live with, you only disrespect sometimes the ones you love the most because I heard a psychological explanation that that they're not going to well, they may overreact, but they're not going to leave you or something like that. So um, you have a controlled experiment there. And really living with other people or traveling with other people can really test things. If you've ever been on the road, you're traveling with another human being of one sort or another, you might notice people's habits and under stressful situations, it might get on your nerves. And so I like your resolve and your practice, Uday, about interacting with your spouse in such a way that you're tolerant. And do you notice that it has a systemic effect? In other words, if you don't overact, if you tolerate whatever situation there is, does it have an effect on your significant other?
Uh, yes, absolutely. I think one is after a few minutes, I can see she's calmed down and she's thinking rationally, which is she's normally most of the times. And other thing is that we are working towards a solution rather than just being in the loop of talking about the same problem or same things that's getting upset. So if something is broken, okay, it's broken. I know, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but okay, what went wrong? How do we make this right? So we're working towards a solution. To answer your question in short, yes, for the situation is not as intense as before. Number two, we are moving towards a solution rather than fighting about the same thing. And three is I don't have to sleep on the couch.
Okay. Yeah, see, there's many benefits to this practice. So I liked what you said about rationality. I've mentioned it previously. I love it, so I mention it a lot. My friend Roger Bihari, who worked professionally in conflict resolution for decades, gave me this insight that the more we give into urges and the more emotional we become, the less rational we are. It's an inverse relationship. You can make a little chart that looks like this. Emotion goes up, rationality goes down, and when you lose your rationality, you may say do something that has a long-term malefic effect. So it's in our best interest to stay steady in circumstances that are agitating to us. Fantastic. Real life examples, those we live with when we're driving. It is something that Krishna advises again and again. So in pleasure pain, we may be, well, let's just, instead of pleasure pain, those are real extreme, like it sounds extreme to me, uh, or a little more extreme than perhaps the word inconvenience. I don't know about you, but I don't like inconveniences. And it is something to tolerate. I notice a lot when I'm traveling because the way I describe it as juxtaposed with staying home is when you travel, you get what you get. And when you're home, you pretty much get what you want because that's your comfort zone. And we could extend it a little and say we're all travelers in this world. The word travel comes from the word travail. If you keep tracing it back etymologically, it comes from an instrument of torture. I was thinking of another philosophical point, but I don't know if I should say it or not. You have to coax me. JMs gave a thumb up, so all right. Okay, so in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridaya sharajuna tishtiti brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rujani maya. It's a very interesting verse and it can help us with tolerance. But think of this verse. I'm going to break it down. Yantra means a machine. So he said, what you're sitting in right now, Satya and Subramanian and Joshua, is a machine. You have eyes, it's robotic, although biological and extremely complex and sophisticated. It is a machine. It's called the yantra. So what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita is that you're within the yantra, you're within the machine. And he says, I'm also there. So there's the consciousness, that's us. You can identify yourself, you can be aware of yourself as an individual conscious being, a jiva. But you can also become aware of the what's called Paramatma, or the supreme consciousness that's also there within our yantra, within our body. And this is a definitive statement. Krishna says, I'm accompanying you as you're traveling. Now, where are we traveling? Well, in this life, we've been a few places, right? But it's not just this life. It means that we, as living entities, travel from one physical environment to another. And what's that environment? Different bodies. And so as we go from one body to the next, we get facility to be in a particular body according to our karma. It's a long philosophical discussion there that we won't go into immediately. And Krishna says, okay, you're going into another body. I'm going with you. I'll be there to help facilitate your journey in that particular body. What occurred to me the other day was that despite the fact that we may go to various unsavory bodies, Krishna still goes with us. And so he's a true friend in that despite the fact that we're traveling to these perhaps unfavorable destinations, various bodies, he stays with us. And that's an amazing aspect of our relationship with the Supreme. Look, JM, we got a long message on the board. Let's hear what
Yeah,
it is.
there are a few matches will come, so I'll just quickly go through them. Aditi, there are a few who shared similar lines about how tolerance. One is Aditi saying, when kids don't listen or make us reiterate the same thing 10 times, then parent have to tolerate. And then Nicholas said, tolerating the judgment from others. And Sundar said, it's easy to tolerate when you have are working on a higher purpose. And Radhakrupa said, someone did not show up for the critical meeting you tolerate. And Subramaniam says, the machine has a mind. He likes it. And then Sutipriya has posted, in regards to rationality and emotions, it makes sense thinking about an incident yesterday where I found a person shouting at a driver in Costco parking lot. It may have been that he was not happy about his driving. I'm thinking it may have made this person feel good that he gave his peace of mind, but it may not have been good for him, especially if he has blood pressure.
Yeah. And when you do see people who are intolerant and you're practicing tolerance, you can notice, well, there, but by the grace of God go I. And I'm glad that I'm practicing tolerance because it oftentimes looks unseemly when people are intolerant and they lose it. You know what? When I was looking up the word tolerate, it led me to the word endure. And to endure something means to suffer something painful or difficult patiently. That's why people are called patients when they're undergoing some treatment. And then it's from Latin, indurare, which means to harden. In means in, and durus means hard. So even in hard situations, we remain patient. That's the idea. So it is um, a principle of self-realization to learn to tolerate. Now, I'll give you an example in the Bhagavad Gita, a very simple thing. Krishna says in second chapter, Matra sparshas tu kanteya shitoshna sukadukada agama payino nityas tams titikshashva bharata. This is another iteration of the idea of tolerance, titiksha, which means to be patient amidst the changes of the world. And in this verse, Krishna says that the weather may change and our sparsha, the way we're being touched by the world, may change. And one who remains equal, whether the weather's hot or whether it's too cold, or even if it's perfect, we don't become overly dependent on the convenience or inconvenience of the environment. And he gives the example of the weather and stay equal. This leads to a fruit of realization of the self. So this is one of the aspects that we're dealing with the physical world. We talked about previously the threefold miseries or disturbances that come from other living entities. Mosquitoes are the biggest killer on the planet. Did you know that? Then there's our own bodies and minds, which cause disturbance, no doubt. And then there's divine forces in the world. And these are the three categories of miseries that we have to learn to tolerate. We have to be patient with them. If you get on the bus, you lose your seat, somebody else sits in it, you can make a stink. And nowadays you'll end up on a YouTube video somewhere making a stink. Or you can just tolerate. Prabhupada gives this example, my teacher. He gave an example, you get on a bus, and you can relate to it more if you're in India. Get in a bus and train, everybody rushes in, sits down. Of course, if it's unascribed seating, and you lose the opportunity to sit, he said you can become disturbed, or you can think, oh, what's the harm? I can stand up for half an hour, no big deal, and get on with whatever you were thinking about previously. And you avoid so much. And you notice also when you tolerate, that you didn't get carried away, and you can see the difference between what would have happened and what did happen, which was nothing, since you tolerated. And so this is a prominent feature mentioned throughout the Bhagavad Gita, an element of practice for self-realization. Let's go to the three more, since I'm really chewing up the clock here. Okay, let's look at this one. This is definitely one of the principles given in the Bhagavad Gita for being grounded, and that is detached action. Detached action. Now, what does that mean? It means you're not attached to the result, you're only attached to the process. Now, if you want to take it to a higher level than that, you're performing duty out of service. That's a higher concept than fruitive work. Is one of the distinctions made in the Bhagavad Gita between the path to enlightenment and the path to bondage. If you're working and you claim the fruits of your work, then you own them. You have to keep that. And that keeps you in this world. But if you work and you don't attach yourself to the results, that's called detach action. That doesn't mean that you don't have what you need. It doesn't mean that if you have a fruit tree, you can't keep any of the fruits. You can, but it should all be offered as service, like fruits you can offer to Krishna and then eat them rather than just saying, these are my fruits, or sell them off for the profit. Although you can always give the profit for a higher cause too. And own nothing, but appreciate everything. And the way to own nothing is to remember who it really belongs to. This is called Isha. There is a supreme controller in the universe who owns everything, and it's not us. Because if it was us, we'd be able to keep whatever we have, and we can't keep anything. We come into the world empty-handed, and we'll leave it empty-handed. Every book you've collected, everyone's got a lot of books. It's the hardest thing in moving, isn't it? If you ever want to move, you got to think, "Well, how am I going to move my books?" And so you can't keep any of your books. They're all going to go to friends, libraries, and things like that. And what to speak of your paintings, your cars, everything left behind. So it's reasonable while you're in the world to consider that I own nothing. I'm using it, however, I can use everything for service. That way, you remain equipoised. Because one of the greatest causes for disturbance is being attached to something and then losing it. As soon as we lose it, we start thinking about it all the time. And we can't give it up. It's there within the mind. If we consider that we're the stewards of whatever we have, and of course, we try to take good care of everything we have, but it's a different experience altogether when we realize that everything that's within our possession is here today, gone tomorrow. So when we perform our duty in a detached way, offering the results to the Supreme, saying, like, I'm doing this as service to the Supreme, then you can remain equipoised in your work. And you try to perfect your work, you do the best you can. Let's see if there's any comments on this. Detached work, what do you think? Possible? Impossible?
There are there are a few comments which have come about.
Comments
One
are
is
good.
from Shome. I'm hoping pronouncing correctly. What are some of the good practices to tolerate happily? Example, be more compassionate or empathic towards the other person versus suppress our feelings.
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the ways is to be in a service mind, to think how can I be of the most help in this situation. When I'm self-centered, I tend to get out of balance. In other words, when I'm thinking the world should come to me in a way that's convenient for me, that's never going to happen. It may happen for a second, then we'll lose it, and then we'll become disturbed. And when we are in service mind, we're thinking, how can I use everything that I have in service? And let's say you're with another person. How can I be of assistance to that person? How can I be of service to that person? As soon as you change your attitude, then the relationship is very different and it becomes much easier to tolerate and to be compassionate and empathetic when you're thinking, how can I be of service? Go ahead, Jam. Let's hear the other ones.
Yeah. Shruti Priya says, thank you. When teenagers don't follow advice, I tend to evaluate my expectation. It makes me, when I have expectation, it makes me upset and lose patience. When I give up expectations, I become indifferent.
Expectation is the mother of disappointment. And look, Janu has her hand up. Let's hear
Yes.
what you have to say, Janu.
Um, so Guru Maharaj, I wanted to check, like, is there a thin line between tolerance versus, um, not suppressing your inner voice, and also between tolerance and your dharma? Like, let's say you go back to the example of the freeway where you're driving and someone cuts you, but there's no damage to you and you tolerate it. But then let's say that person cuts your car and it damages your car, and then what's the
No,
thing?
you don't tolerate that.
Okay.
That you have to do due diligence, means you're minor accident, you're supposed to pull off the freeway, and so is the other person. And then you exchange numbers and insurance and you deal with it. But in the process, you do it because you have to take care of your stuff. But it doesn't just it doesn't mean to become a doormat, and tolerance doesn't mean if somebody's bullying you, or let's say you're at work and somebody undermines your work and throws away your file so they can put their file on top or something like that. Could happen. uh, it doesn't mean that you don't do anything about it, but there's a way to do things about it. In other words, you do your due diligence, but you do it in a tolerant way at the same time. That's called nonviolent communication, or that's one aspect of it where you do what you have to do, but don't become disturbed
Yeah.
in the course of doing your duty.
Be
Yeah.
graceful about it. Don't get angry. Don't raise your voice. And
Oh, it's
do it.
very disarming for people when you do that.
Yeah.
I was years ago, I just remember I was painting something and I was down at the paint store and I thought I'm just going to run in. I have to grab a can. And I had parked my car just outside the paint store. And when I came out, the meter control person was out there writing me a ticket and saw me and was obviously anxious because they get yelled at a lot. So he said, I had to write you a ticket. I go, okay. I didn't react. And he took the ticket back and he said, I'm not giving it to you because you didn't react. I came home and told my wife, see, tolerance works. But I already thought, okay, if I don't put money in the meter, I could get a ticket. I'm going in. There was a risk. I came out. I didn't react. And it's amazing how the environment changes when you take that stance. I'm not saying that's going to happen every single time, but the fact is, it's noticeable how people are expecting you to overreact to certain circumstances. And when you don't, then oftentimes it solves the problem right there, or people come clean, or they'll apologize to you. It's like, oh, they realize their own folly if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought that point earlier, or somebody brought that point about spouse's reaction. I think when people see you, when they expect you to not tolerate and you do tolerate, they respect you a lot, whether it's your spouse or your family member, because they see you acting with a lot of grace. So I think you set a good example, and I think that it also helps you, show through actions, and earn the respect of people.
Absolutely, John, because you can't do this unless you have a higher intention.
Right.
And it's noticeable the effect that it has.
Thank you.
JM,
Yeah.
we better do the last two slides.
Okay.
Or I better do them, and then that way you can read the rest of the notes. So, two more concepts that I'm going to relay from the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And the third is, drum roll please, a long drum roll. We're just tolerating, JM.
So
I know why you're doing this. You want to show what tolerance looks like. Ta-da! Withdraw the senses like a tortoise. This is an example that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. Control of attention, not suppression, stabilizes the mind. So there's a way in which when we learn to control urges, urges are interesting. They come and they plant a flag and they say, I'm going to be here forever. But I've heard scientific studies about there's a certain number of seconds or minutes that if you tolerate, then that urge diminishes. The other point Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, when you learn to control, regulate your senses, then you're more peaceful and you can deal with the world without the spikes that occur when the senses are uncontrolled. People's senses are uncontrolled, like if they were taking intoxication, they stayed up all night and then they're driving. Let's say they're not intoxicated, but they're out of sorts. If somebody cuts them off, they're gonna, beyond their own control, they'll become angry. And so when we practice controlling the senses, and so much of that has to do where we're placing our attention. If we put it into randomness, like scrolling and so forth, then the mind becomes unreliable. But if we practice mantra meditation, for instance, then the mind starts to take on a natural state of equiposition. Okay, let's do the last one since we're down to the last 3 minutes. This is another way of being equal. See all beings with equal vision. All beings? Yes, all beings. This is an example given in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says the learned person, the person who has equanimity, sees every living entity as a spiritual being. That includes plants, trees, animals, humans, and different kinds of animals and humans and so forth. For instance, the materialistic vision is to judge people according to their body, their status, and the spiritual vision is to see beyond their status. Okay, what's your status? I'm a cat. What's your status? I'm a raccoon. What's your status? I'm a man. Other status, I'm a woman. Not true, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. You're not a raccoon. You're not a cat. You're not a man. You're not a woman. You're a jiva. You just happen to be in that particular vehicle right at that moment. Now, a disclaimer, it doesn't mean that we go and embrace a tiger because we're all equal spiritually, or that we're all beyond the body. You still have to be in the practical world and interact. If the policeman stops you, or if you're in a certain situation, you still have to act according to the social norm at that particular time and not claim some supervision that I'm beyond the body. But the vision is equal because you see that all living beings are simply covered by temporary bodies, which are like coats and pants, including ourselves. And therefore, we tolerate. Okay, bonus round since we're almost out of time. I have a few sayings I want to put down for you here in the last few minutes. May I?
yes, please. Yes.
Okay, one is the question to ask whenever something comes up in your life, and you can use this all day long. What's the lesson? When you ask what the lesson is, then you train yourself to react to things in a responsible way rather than becoming a victim. Next is a mantra. Things are never as good as they seem or as bad as they seem. Because the immediate reaction when you hear bad news or you hear something that sounds scary is to overreact and become intolerant. So remember this, things are never as good as they seem, as bad as they seem. Next one is this too shall pass. Oh, what a powerful mantra. And that's one that Krishna uses throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Remember, it's just passing through. We're just passing through, so tolerate. Next one is concentrate on effort, not results. Put in your best effort. Do the best you can with what you have right now and don't worry about the results. It's not up to you. Whatever you resist persists. So if you push back on things, then it grows. Another is flip the switch. I'm going to show you how to do it. Just put your hand behind your head right now, everybody. There's a little switch back there. You didn't know it was there. And then flip it and you turn off the humanoid in you and you become a little AI robot. So turn off your emotion and just learn to do that. You can flip the switch. And another one is to meditate and practice noticing that you're not your thoughts. If you're able to isolate and see that thoughts are passing through all the time, just like clouds, and that you're not your thoughts, you gain a perspective which gives you a means by which you will naturally feel equal in all circumstances. Practice equanimity. Try it out for a week and see what it's like. Try it out for a day. Try it out for an hour. Employ some of these principles and see what it feels like. It's an authorized practice given in the Bhagavad Gita, and people will notice the difference in you. You'll notice the difference in you, and you'll also come to the heart of the matter, which is, I'm not this body. And I'm just in a body and I'm in a world that's always changing, but it has nothing to do with me, nothing at all. I just am here by circumstance. Look, my young showed up at the last minute. Now that's always a good sign. I'm very grateful to everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. I missed you all over the last few weeks, and I, I mean, you all look great. Looks like you had a good time off. I'm glad, and look forward to more. JM, how should we sign off? I had this revelation. I wasn't in the Himalayas. I was way down in South India, and I noticed that the practice has spread because I saw we were leaving on a bus, and all the people at the bus stand did the same thing as the yogis in the Himalayas to say goodbye. They put their hands way up in the air and they said Hari Bol. So I just thought we could try it. Nirali's into it already. Hari Bol.
Haribo!
Thanks, everybody. See you
Haribo.
again soon.
Thank
Tolerate.